Welcome to today's explainer. If you've ever looked at software development and thought it was just this giant, intimidating wall of dry code, we're going to look at it a whole lot differently today. We're exploring developing Flutter UI, animation, and navigation, but we're not treating it like some boring checklist. Instead, think of it as an architectural blueprint. We are going to walk through the exact, precise steps a developer takes to build an application entirely from the ground up, turning flat, static components into a living, breathing user experience. It's really a builder's journey.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Here is our master construction plan. We'll start with Section 1, Designing User-Friendly Interfaces. Then we'll move to Bringing Apps to Life, Mastering App Navigation, Adding Essential Media, and finally, looking at real-world limits and evaluation.
So, kicking things off with Section 1, Designing User-Friendly Interfaces. This is where we lay our solid foundation.
Now, before we get to the flashy animated stuff, we have to look at tools like Bootstrap to create our foundational user-friendly elements. We're talking about designing highly effective forms, adding intuitive buttons, and setting up crystal-clear navigation bars. And you might be wondering why start here. Well, because if your forms are confusing or if your buttons are placed in ways that literally just frustrate the user, absolutely no amount of beautiful animation is going to save your app. These elements are the structural concrete of our digital house. You've got to get this right first to ensure you're actually building a truly user-friendly interface. Moving on to Section 2, Bringing Apps to Life. It's time to wire the house and give it a pulse.
Just look at the sheer variety of kinetic tools we have at our disposal in the Flutter Animation Toolkit. We've got the animated container, animated crossfade, animated opacity, the animation controller, and staggered animation. I want you to view these not just as lines of code, but as the literal muscle that turns static, boring elements into dynamic, totally engaging components. For instance, an animated crossfade acts as this incredibly smooth transition between two states, making the app look so polished. In staggered animation, that allows your visual elements to load in a beautifully sequenced cascade rather than just aggressively popping onto the screen all at once. This toolset is exactly how developers give their apps that modern, high-energy feel.
Section 3. Mastering App Navigation. Let's start connecting the rooms of our digital house.
And this brilliantly illustrates the hallways of our application using the navigation toolkit. We're looking at the navigator, the named navigator route, the bottom navigation bar, plus the tab bar and tab bar view. Implementing seamless app navigation is just absolutely vital. It's entirely on the developer to master this, because think about it. You can have the most beautifully animated rooms in your app, but if the hallways connecting them are a confusing maze, the user's going to get lost and eventually just leave. These specific tools allow us to seamlessly and intuitively connect different screens, ensuring the user can smoothly navigate from one room of our digital space to another without a hitch.
Section 4. Adding Essential Media. We're moving into the interior design phase.
You see, an application simply isn't complete without these final tactile details. You absolutely must include icons, images, and charts into the Flutter app. But beyond just making it look pretty with media, you have to apply gestures. Gestures represent the actual physical interaction layer of your app. It's how the software responds to a user's tap, a swipe, or, that impatient pinch when a photo just won't zoom in. Combining these visual media elements with intuitive, responsive gestures is what truly finalizes the user interaction layer and makes the digital space feel tangible and real.
So we have our Bootstrap foundations, we've got Flutter animations, complex tab bars, and gesture controls. But we really have to stop and ask a critical question here. Are these tools flawless? It's honestly incredibly easy for a developer to look at a powerful toolkit and just assume it can do everything perfectly without any consequences. But asking this question sets up a massive pivot in our builder's journey. It takes us right out of the construction phase and pushes us straight into the analytical phase. Which brings us to Section 5, Real-World Limits and Evaluation. Time for the reality check. This step marks the major transition from just being a coder to becoming a true software engineer. We have a clear three-step progression going on here. Step 1, implement and integrate your modules. Step 2, design those interactive UI components. But Step 3 is the heavy hitter. Evaluate limitations for real-world applications. True mastery of app development isn't just knowing how to make a button fade in or a screen slide over. It's crucially about evaluating the limitations of those exact tools. Does that beautiful staggered animation cause a frame rate drop on a 5-year-old smartphone? Does your seamless navigation consume way too much battery? You have to validate their effectiveness in the real world, not just in a perfectly optimized development environment. So, the crucial point is really seeing the full journey we've taken today. We started out with a basic UI, those static, unmoving forms and simple buttons that served as our foundation. And through the strategic, careful application of these toolkits, we've evolved all the way to a dynamic UI,
A living, breathing ecosystem filled with smooth animations, seamless navigation, rich media, and incredibly responsive gestures.
To really hammer home why this entire process matters so much, listen to this exact phrasing pulled straight from the source material. It says, "We must evaluate the limitations of Flutter's animation and navigation tools, validating their effectiveness in real-world applications." That quote right there is your anchor. It proves that a professional developer's job is never just about building something that looks cool. You must continually test, inspect, and evaluate your interactive designs against reality. You have to ensure that the beautiful architecture you've spent so much time building can actually withstand the wild elements of real-world usage.
Which brings us to the end of our blueprint. And I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. You now completely understand the tools for adding a pulse with animation, the strategies for routing your hallways with navigation, and the absolute mandate to test the boundaries of those very features. So I have to ask you, how are you going to evaluate the limits of Flutter's UI tools in your next real-world app? What reality checks are you going to put in place? Keep that question front and center the next time you sit down to code. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and as always, happy building.